Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Crafts with Ash DIY and Decor. My name's Ashley, and today I put together some of my favorite summer DIYs from past videos, and my subscribers and viewers seem to love them too. They are full of color, fun, and I know you're going to enjoy these. First, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit that notification bell, and in the drop down menu, click all so you're notified about all notifications. Coming into the spring and summer seasons, I have so many ideas for room makeovers, organization videos, room refreshers, DIYs, and getting my pool area and backyard ready for summer. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, definitely hang with me for a while by subscribing. All right, let's get into these DIYs. This is a long one, but pour yourself a glass of nice lemonade. Let's get into the summer spirit and let's get crafting. The first dupe we'll be recreating is a little bird feeder, and I loved this when I saw it on the website, but I did not like the price tag. But I knew that I had all the items to make it, so I went for it. So I started off by taking apart that little metal flower that I got from the Dollar Tree, and then I grabbed this little glass candlestick. Now I needed to put the glass candlestick, I needed to glue it to the metal flower, but there's a dip in the flower, so I just cut off a piece of wood and super glued it to the back of the flower. And then I hot glued the candlestick to the wood. Now, eventually you'll see me fight this thing because I kind of forgot. Hot glue doesn't really get along well with glass. So you'll see me a little bit later take it off and super glue and hot glue the candlestick to the flower. Next, I pushed up all the petals on the flower, and I'm gonna paint this entire thing with 2 coats of Waverly white chalk paint. Now, if you caught my video of 4 ways to use these metal flowers, I posted it about a month ago. I can go ahead and link it in the description box and at the end of this video. But one thing I found out that the easiest way to paint this is to do it layer by layer. So what you want to do is you want to paint 1 layer. So there I am painting the bottom, and then I'm going to dry it with my hairdryer, and then I'm going to give it the second coat. After that's dry, I'll move to the middle layer and then finally the top layer. I just found that it was way easier to paint it like that instead of keep moving those petals up and down. So, like I said, I just gave this 2 coats of Waverly chalk paint in white. After my flower was all painted, I gave 2 coats of the white Waverly chalk paint to the candlestick as well. Okay, so here's where you'll see that I was fighting the candlestick and realized about the whole glass and hot glue thing. So I'm just adding some super glue to the top, and then I'm going to add some hot glue to the top as well, and then I'll push that in the middle of the wood on the back of my flower. Next, I put that aside to let it set, and I grabbed this cute little bird that I actually got at Dollar General, and it was only $1. So I went ahead and gave that 2 coats of the Waverly white chalk paint as well. Once all my pieces were dry, it was now time to assemble it. So all I did was simply hot glue the bird on the petal that had the hole in it. I did this so I would hide the hole, and it worked. So I just put a generous amount of hot glue. I held it on there, and then I just went back and reinforced some of the parts that the bird was touching the petals, the other petals, with some hot glue. So I actually was able to hot glue those two petals on either side of the bird on the bird's feet, and that really helped to secure it. I have not had a problem with this falling off since, and I think it's because I put a ton of hot glue. Finally, to give it that rustic look, I took my antique Waverly wax and my favorite distressing brush and just dry brushed some of that wax all over this entire piece. Now, I did go a little darker around the edges of the flower, the bird, and the candlestick, so that way it just highlighted that a little bit more. Now, I did go over some of the darker parts of the Waverly wax with some white paint. That way it all blended in. But I absolutely loved how this came out. Now, it is supposed to be a bird feeder. I don't think I would actually use it as one because my piece is a little bit smaller than the Kirkland's piece, but I still think that it is super cute. Now, if I wasn't trying to dupe this exactly, I would have actually probably left some of the color because, you know me, I'm not farmhouse and I love color, but I still think that this came out super cute. For my next Kirkland's dupe, we're going to make a really cute summer sign. So I started off with this Easter sign, and it is one of the longer ones, and I plucked off his feet, his bow, and his eyes. So then I cut the string off the top, the twine hanger, and then I'm going to give this 2 really good coats of white Waverly chalk paint. Once that was painted, I set it aside and let it dry. Next, I took this little box. Now, I already had one that I had made a craft with that never made it to a YouTube video, and so I'm just going to use that. But that mermaid one is what it looks like at the Dollar Tree. So all I need from this box is the top of it, the little curved, looks like half moon. So I just turned it around, and then using my hair dryer, I scraped off the tag. Then I measured just where the box is and drew a line, and then just by using a knife, I scored it about 3 or 4 times, and then I was able to just kind of break it off. After that, I used my scissors to clean up the edges, and then I also sanded it down. Now, because I put hot glue around the edges of mine, I had to sand the whole thing down, but you probably won't have to do that. After that, I gave this 2 really good coats of white Waverly chalk paint. Once that was dry, I took my spring green paint from Apple Barrel and I went along the edges of the bottom. We're going to be making this look like a watermelon. So I at first started just going on the edges, and then I got a little bit on the top too, so I just went with it and I just made the rind, I guess that would be called, I'm not sure, of the watermelon just a little bit thicker. Next, I took my red paint from Apple Barrel and I mixed it with some white so that way it wasn't so bold red and it was just a lighter red. Now, I kind of went too light because it ended up kind of just being pink. So what I did was I started painting it on and then realized it was a little too pink, so I just added a little bit more red. It didn't really seem to change it much, so I just painted it with that color that I had, but I just painted the top section of my watermelon. While you watch me paint this watermelon, I just want to welcome you. If you are new to my channel, I am so happy that you joined me today. And if you're a subscriber, thank you so much for being here again, and I hope that you love everything that you see. I want to thank everyone for all of the support that you've been giving me these past couple months. My page is almost to 4,000 subscribers, so I want to thank you so much for all of that wonderful support. I have loved this journey and I love sharing all of these ideas with all of you. So thank you. After that, I took some black acrylic paint and just drew on some little seeds. Finally, I made some little touch-ups to my little watermelon and then I put it to the side to let it dry. Next, I took my white board that was now dry and I took my ruler and I stuck it in the middle of my board. And then I just traced on both sides of my ruler and then moved it down so the lines went all the way across the board. Now, I always say that I purposely bought this ruler at the Dollar Tree because I really like the width. I feel like that would be the width of fake shiplap, so it's so easy for me to make the fake shiplap on my board by just using that ruler. Once I drew my lines, I just took my finger and smudged them. That way it all blended in and created that faux shiplap look. Next, I took these stencils that I actually got from Amazon, and I'll definitely put the link in the description box. I love these. They are so easy to use, and they work really well. And I think they're either 2 or 3 inches or 4 inches. I don't remember. The link will be in the description box. So I went ahead and pulled out all of my letters because we're going to be spelling out the word summer. Now, the watermelon is actually going to be the U, so you only need SMER. I lined up all my stencils and I just threw that H in there to save the place of the second M. That way I had all my spacing ready to go. After that, I took just regular red acrylic paint and I stenciled on all of my letters. This is why I love these stencils. Look how pretty much clean those came out. Now, before I stenciled on the second M, I did wipe off that stencil and then I put it on my board because I didn't want any extra red paint getting on the board. So then I just went ahead and stenciled the second M on and all my letters were done. Next, I moved to the top of my board and used these smaller stencils that I got from the Dollar Tree, and by using my spring green paint, I spelled out the word sweet. Now you want to make sure to put the first E right in the middle of your board because that's what breaks center, and then work your way out on either side. Now, these letters did not end up being right in the center, but that's okay. It didn't really bug me. The T is a little further away from that E, but oh well, I guess it just makes it look rustic. So after that, I just went with my white paint and just touched up any of the marks that were there that weren't supposed to be. And then I decided that I wanted my letters to just stick out a little bit more. So I took my black Sharpie and just traced out all of my letters. Then to tie my watermelon in with the letters, I decided to take my Sharpie and just kind of color in around the edges. That way it brought out that black and would match all of the other letters. Now the sign at Kirkland's did not have that rustic look, but you know me, I had to do it. I really tried not to make it look rustic, but I just had to. So I went ahead and sanded the whole thing down to kind of dull down the letters, and I also sanded down the watermelon so that way that looked a little bit rustic and antique too. Oh, there's my little ladybug just cleaning up all that little sawdust. Link is in the description box if you want to pick yourself up one. So cute. Next, I went ahead and I hot glued my watermelon down underneath my S. Next, to add more of that rustic touch, I took some black acrylic paint and my makeup sponge and just dabbed the edges of my board. Now, I started off light and then I went ahead and kind of went a little darker. I did go heavier in some spots too, but I really just wanted this little antique look, and so I just did this all around my board. Then after that, I did go into the middle of my board and just randomly put some black marks throughout that too. Then to finish this off, I decided that the green letters kind of looked weird without being outlined, so I went ahead and used my Sharpie to outline that too. I love this sign. I'm really glad that I kind of made it a little bit rustic because that's more my style, but I absolutely love it. This next one is super easy. So I started off with this mini picture that I got from the Dollar Tree, and you guys, I love these. They come in pink and blue and white, and I picked up several so I can use them for a bunch of DIYs. I was so excited to find these, but I really needed to get that image off of there, so I just used my 100% acetone and a paper towel, and it wiped right up. I was so surprised with how easy that came up, but look at that. Now it's just one plain white picture. So after that, I took some rub-on transfers that I got from the Dollar Tree, and these are the ones that have like the leafy greenery, I guess, and I simply just rubbed these on. Now, I did not have enough to go around my whole picture, only just one side of it, but had I had enough, I would have gone around the whole thing, but that's okay. I'll just display it with that side showing. So I just cut them out to size and then simply rubbed it on. It was that easy. I got all my rub-ons on my picture, I took some yellow acrylic paint and the bottom of a small paintbrush, and I just put polka dots all over each one of these. Now I did yellow, and then you'll see I switched to blue, but I did yellow, blue, and that was it. That completed this picture, and I love how this came out. This next DIY was a lot of fun to do. So I picked up this vase from the Dollar Tree, and then I had these handles left over from a basket that I had cut up. Now you do not have to add the handles. I'm just trying to make it look as much like the Kirkland's piece as possible, but I cut them down so they were somewhat the same size, and then by using my super glue and hot glue, I glued them on to the sides of my vase. Next, I took my nutmeg apple barrel paint and I put a good amount into a bowl, and then I put some elephant gray apple barrel paint in the bowl too, and then I put some baking soda. I'm gonna try to go for that cement look. Now I wish I could tell you measurements, I really don't know. You just kind of have to add paint and baking soda until you get the texture that you need. So I just kept doing that and until I got what I needed. So you can see that it got a little bit too dried up, so then I added more paint, and then I'm just gonna keep stirring it and just adding until I get the texture that I needed. So once I got it to the consistency that I liked, I went ahead and started painting it on, but as you can see, it didn't really work. So then I decided that I needed to go ahead and paint a base coat on my vase first. So what I did was I added a bunch more nutmeg paint into that mixture, and then I just kind of brushed over it. Then you're going to see that I add a lot more paint just directly on the vase, and I paint this whole thing with one coat of that nutmeg paint. So once I had my vase painted with that base coat, I went back to my mixture and it kind of dried up a little bit, so I just kept adding paint until I got it back to the texture that I needed. And what you need is just like cement, like exactly what you think the consistency of cement would be. Now the piece from Kirkland's was more gray than it was brown, so I decided to add my Waverly chalk paint elephant gray to this mixture to lighten it up just a little bit and make it look more like cement and not so brown. So once I had that all mixed together, and I'm going to show you a closer look of what it should look like, then I took just a regular kitchen sponge and I cut off a little piece, and then I simply just dabbed this mixture all over my vase. And I love how this texture came out. It is so cool. I mean, honestly, look at that. I mean, that just looks like cement right there. I mean, it is a little browner than cement, but don't worry, we're gonna do something about that in a minute. But how neat is that? I just love that. Also, I want to remind you, if you're loving what you're seeing today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up because it really helps my channel to grow. But not only that, it tells YouTube that you like my content and that you want to see more. So some of my videos will pop up in your YouTube feed. It's all about the algorithm. So don't forget to hit that like button. So like I said, this is a little browner than what I wanted. So I took my steel Waverly chalk paint and I just did the same thing. Now I did let that brown coat dry first and then I went over that whole thing with the steel. Now it looks like it's pretty thick on right now, like the gray is pretty dark. So all you do is you just keep dabbing it until you get the look you're going for. So that's exactly what I did. I just kept dabbing it and just kind of mixing the two colors together, so that original mixture and then the gray. I did make it heavier, darker in some places and lighter in some others, but it's really just up to however you like it and whatever you want it to look like. Then I did go in and add some black just to add a little bit more dimension, and I thought this came out so cool. For the last DIY dupe, I started off by using this pack of the long skewers that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. I took 4 and I simply cut them each in half with my miter shears. After I had all of my skewers cut down, I piled them on top of each other at a point and just added a ton of hot glue. So I started with 2 and then I added the third one, but I had it kind of like a tripod, if that makes sense. So I had it angled up. And then I went ahead and added a bunch of hot glue and then I added one on the other side. So all 4 of them came to a point at the top. Now, while I was constructing this, I literally was saying out loud, I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but this was just the only way that I could think of to make all 4 of these come together so that way it would stand up. Next, after all 4 of them were glued at the top, I took this sign that I got from the Dollar Tree and it has a removable inside. So I removed the inside and then I put the skewers inside of that frame. And then I just added a ton of hot glue and pushed the skewers to the corners. That way it all stayed together. After my bottom was attached, I moved up to the top, and by using the remaining skewers that I had cut off earlier, I measured them to each side of the top of this little well, I guess it's not a tripod, this little stand. And then I went ahead and cut them down and then hot glued each one of them on the inside of each of the skewers. Now you need to make sure that when you are gluing your sticks on these skewers that you glue them evenly going around, so that way it makes one big square going around all of your skewers. After that was done, I painted this entire base with 2 coats of black acrylic paint. Now, I did have to sand down that little box at the bottom because it was very shiny. It was kind of like a plasticky kind of material, so I did sand it down so that way the paint would stick, and it did seem to work. But I did go ahead and give that 2 coats, and thinking about it, I actually got away with just 1 coat on all of the actual real wood, so all of the sticks. But for that bottom square, the frame at the bottom, I definitely needed 2 coats. After that was painted, I put it off to the side and let it dry. Next, I grabbed one of these metal flowers again, and this time this one is on a stick, so I did have to use my wire cutters to get the stick off. So all I had to do was score it, and then I was able to bend it back and forth, and then eventually it went ahead and broke off. Next, I took some white Waverly chalk paint and I dry brushed some of that over each one of these petals. Now, because I was not painting this entire thing, I didn't worry about moving all the petals up and down and getting into all of the nooks and crannies. I just was trying to dry brush over it, but I did want some of the yellow to show through. After that, I took some of my nutmeg apple barrel paint and I painted the inside of my flower. Now, I don't know where the footage of this next part went, but I also took a little bit of yellow paint and just kind of dry brushed little dots in there to make it look like the sunflower seeds. So in order to get this to attach to my stand, I did have to cut up some craft sticks to create a base, because there is a dip in the middle of that metal flower. So after I got my base put on, I just added a ton of hot glue and hot glued it to the top of my base, so at the point. And I just added hot glue to the entire thing. Now, I did eventually add some duct tape to the back because I just did not trust it, and it really seemed to work. I mean, it's holding up really well. But I really love this. I think it is so cute. I'm thinking I'm going to give it to my sister because she loves sunflowers. So for this first DIY, I picked up this wood plaque from the thrift store, and I honestly don't remember how much I paid, but I know it was not much, and I knew I wanted to make a summer sign. So the first thing I did was give this a really good coat of Waverly chalk paint in white, and I painted the front and all the sides. Next, after that was dry, I took my painter tape and I taped off the perimeter just like a rectangle going around the sign. I made sure the edge of the tape was flush up against the edge on the top and the bottom of the sign, and then because the sign was curved on the other sides, I just kind of eyeballed it, but I just wanted a really good rectangle. After all my tape was down, I took my bright yellow apple barrel paint and I gave the inside of my rectangle 2 coats of that. Once my paint was dry, I took these sticker letters that I got from the Dollar Tree and I spelled out the word sunshine. I started with the S and the H first because they are going to break center, and then I worked my way out on either side. Now, as you can see, I actually ran out of room for the S to fit. So all I did was move my tape over just a little bit, and then I'm going to take that yellow paint and I'm going to paint over it. So I'm just extending the length of my rectangle. Then once my new yellow paint was dry, I went ahead and stuck the S and the E back on. I fixed all my letters so they were all lined up and positioned well. And then once I was confident that I liked how it looked, I pushed down each of my letters. Next, I took that Waverly chalk paint in white and I painted 2 coats over my letters. Once my white paint was dry, I took my little knife and I peeled up each one of the letters. Then I took a small paintbrush and some yellow paint and just made some touch-ups around the letters where there was some bleeding. After that, I took off the painter's tape around my letters. Now it's kind of hard to see right now, but there was a line where the painter tape was, so I just took my white paint and blended it all in. Next, I took some skinnier washi tape and I outlined around the letters again, and then I'm going to use my ruler to draw some lines. Now I did also use my ruler to go ahead and measure and make sure that the washi tape was even on the top and the bottom. After I had my rectangle all taped out again, I took my black paint marker and I outlined the inside of the washi tape. After that, I peeled off the washi tape. Next, I took the sheet of puffy stickers that I got from the Dollar Tree and I painted 2 of them with black acrylic paint. Next, I sanded over my black lines just so it wasn't so bold. After my puffy stickers were dry, I put one on either side of my plaque. To give my words a little more detail, I took the back of a paintbrush and some white paint and I just put polka dots in all of my letters. Next, I took my white paint and I just lightly brushed over my black lines because I decided it was a little dark. Although in a little bit, you're going to see me go back over it with my black marker because I decided it was a little too light. After that, I took a pencil and I just freehand in cursive the word hello right in the middle of the word sunshine. Once I decided I liked that, I took my black paint marker and traced what I had written. And here we go with my indecisiveness. I'm tracing over my black line again because I decided it was too light. And honestly, I kept going back and forth. I couldn't decide whether I liked it more bold or lighter. So you're gonna have to let me know in the comments which one you liked better. Next, I took that yellow paint and I painted around the edges of my sign. And here we go. I'm sanding the lines down once again. And then I also sanded the word down so that wasn't so bold. Like I said, I really could not decide, so I just kept going back and forth. After that, I took my Waverly Antique Wax and my favorite distressing brush, and I dry brushed over the entire sign just to make it look a little bit more rustic, because you know me, I love that look. And after that was done, this sign was complete. I really love how this came out. I didn't put a hanger or anything on it because it could be like a really cute shelf sitter, but I really love the bright colors mixed with the rustic look. But you're gonna have to let me know, what do you think? For my next DIY, I picked up this item from the thrift store, and I believe it is a trivet. There's like a big tile in the middle, but I decided that I was going to make this into a sign instead. So what I did was I taped off the perimeter, the wood around it, so I could go ahead and paint the inside. I really had a tough time trying to get this tile out, so instead of fighting it, I just decided to do this instead. After it was all taped off, I gave this 2 really good coats of white Waverly chalk paint. So when I started creating this, I really didn't know where I was going with it. I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna do something to it and it'll come to me. So I'm gonna take you through the journey of how I came to the final product. And the reason why I kept this all in here is because I wanted to show you that we as crafters don't always know what we're doing either. And sometimes it takes us making mistakes to get to what we actually want. After my white paint was dry, I took some washi tape and I taped down this stencil to help keep it secure. And then I took black acrylic paint and this stenciling brush and I stenciled this stencil on my sign in the middle. And I also forgot to mention that I actually got these stencils in a pack from the Dollar General. After that, I went ahead and I pulled up all of the tape to reveal my stenciled art underneath. But what ended up happening was there was a lot of bleeding. It did not turn out great. I don't know if I did it wrong or what, but this was a fail. So after that, I wiped it off with a baby wipe and then I painted over it with white chalk paint again. Then I took a different stencil and I saw a method where if you put Mod Podge over the stencil first, that it really helps with the bleeding. So after my Mod Podge was dry, I went through and I stenciled in the black acrylic paint one more time. Then after that was done, I went ahead and peeled up the tape one more time and my stencil, and it worked a little better. There was some bleeding, but it definitely wasn't perfect. Then to clean up all of my letters, I went through with a black Sharpie and just outlined all of my words just to make it look a little cleaner. After that, I brushed over the words with my white brush and I dry brushed over it. So I lightly did it just to make it look a little bit more rustic. Then I took these rub-on transfers that I got from the Dollar Tree and I rubbed them on, and these were so easy to do. I really loved the quality of these rub-on transfers. So I just kind of created a little bouquet of leaves, I guess, down at the corner and then up at the opposite corner. So I just rubbed them all on until I liked it. This is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you see today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you're loving my content and that you want to see more. So YouTube will put it in your suggested videos and on your homepage. So don't forget to hit that like button. After my rub-ons were down, I dry brushed over those with the white chalk paint as well. Then I took my Waverly Antique Wax and I brushed over the edges with that using a makeup sponge, and then I also hit the inside of that as well. Next, I pulled off all of the tape, revealing the wood around it. And I'm thinking that this project is done, but as I'm looking at it, I decided I really hated it. So this was a fail. So, third time's a charm. What I did was I painted over the stencil part with my white chalk paint, and I left the rub-ons on there because I thought maybe I could use them. But then I remembered that I had this amazing calendar that I got from the Dollar Tree, and it's new, and I love the colors and the messages on each one of the pages. So what I did was I just went through and I picked out the one that I wanted to use, and I decided to go with the message that said, "Enjoy the simple things." I really loved the colors in that, and I thought that the wood around the tile would really complement it. So what I did was I put the paper on top and then I traced over it, because remember, I couldn't at this point get the tile out. And then I used my fingernail to trace around, and then I cut it out. Then I used my Mod Podge and I put on a nice thin and even layer, and then I just simply pushed my calendar page on top of that. Next, I used my little knife to cut off the excess paper, and it was really easy to do because I was able just to follow the little gap in between the wood and the tile, so it was really easy. But then I really wanted to make sure that the tile had nice clean edges, so I pushed really hard on the tile, and I was finally able to get it away from the frame. Next, to give it that nice clean edge, I took my sanding block and I sanded all the edges in the down direction. After that, I put a coat of Mod Podge on top of my paper to protect it from coming up. Then I put my tile back into the frame. Now somehow I got some paint around the frame, so I decided to sand down the wood a little bit just to make it a little lighter and also to get that paint off of there. But then I took my Waverly Antique Wax and I went around the edges of my tile, that way it blended in all of the sides, and also of course so it gave it that rustic look. Now you can see some wrinkles in my calendar page, so I decided just to sand over it, and if it ripped a little bit, I was okay with that because again it gave me that rustic look that I really love. I did forget to mention that I should have done this Waverly Antique Wax before I put the Mod Podge on. So if you're going to recreate something like this, I would highly recommend that you put the wax on first and then Mod Podge over it. Next, I dry brushed over the wood with my white chalk paint just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more dimension and character. Then to blend everything in, I sanded it down. I cannot believe it took me 2 attempts to get to my final product. So that just goes to show that you can always fix your mistakes, or if you don't like it, don't be afraid to just redo it and go for another idea. I really love how this came out, and aren't you glad that I didn't leave it with that second attempt? I really did not like it. It just was not colorful enough. It wasn't me, but I love this. What do you think? Now, for my last DIY, I'm actually going to be making something for my daughter. She'd recently got a new bike for her birthday, and she really wanted a basket in the front. So I remember that I had thrifted this basket a while ago, so I went in my stash and I got to work. So the first thing I did was I used my big knife to cut off the handle because we're not going to be using it. Now, the top of this basket is a little rough, but I will be doing something about that, especially because it will be for a child. But the first thing I did was give this entire basket a good coat of Waverly chalk paint in white. Now, I should have painted the inside of the basket at this point, but for some reason I decided I wasn't going to do that, but I will go back and repaint it. After that, I took some pink Parfait apple barrel paint and I painted the top strip with that. Now, again, I will be changing my mind, but for now, this is what I did. Next, I took some folk art, I believe it's folk art, hot pink or magenta paint, and I started painting the bottom of the basket with that. But then once I thought about it, I remembered that her bike is more light pink and white. So I didn't really want a lot of magenta because I feel like it would clash. So what I did was I wiped off the magenta as much as I could, and then I just decided to paint the entire basket with that pink Parfait paint. Then I went in with that magenta paint and I painted the top strip of my basket. While my basket was drying, I took this wood piece that I actually got out of a big package of just wooden shapes from the Dollar Tree, and I gave it a really good coat of that magenta paint. Next, I took these sticker letters, and I saw this method that if you put it on something that the stickers wouldn't adhere to and then line them up, you can actually push them down and then just peel it off. So that way it keeps all of your letters lined up. I have to say it worked pretty well. I might not have been using the best thing for this method, but it did help me keep all my letters straight and lined up. So I'm going to spell out Princess on board. So I used that same method to put my words on board on my sign as well. After my stickers were all pushed down, I took that Waverly chalk paint and I painted my entire sign. After my sign was dry, I used my little knife to peel up all of my stickers. Next, I took these really cute half pearl stickers, and I put them all around the perimeter of my sign. I really love this because I think that it added that girly touch. After that, I took the bottom of a paintbrush and I dipped it in that pink parfait paint, and I just gave this little sign some cute little polka dots. Next, I took that magenta paint and I painted the sides of my sign. Then I took a smaller paintbrush and I dipped it in that magenta paint and gave the sign even more cute little polka dots. Now, to solve the problem of it being a little bit rough up top and I don't want it to hurt my daughter, I took this really cute duct tape that I got at the Dollar Tree, and it just so happened to be silver and really colorful and pretty, and I just went ahead and stuck it over the top of my basket. That way she wouldn't get cut on the wood. It didn't matter how much I would sand it down, or it was actually kind of hard to sand it down. It still was really rough and had some jagged edges, so I wanted to do this to protect her from getting cut. Then this is where I decided to go ahead and paint the inside of my basket with that white paint. Then finally, I took this super glue and some hot glue, put it on my little sign, and then I glued it right in the front of the basket. I think this basket came out super adorable and my daughter absolutely loves it. She gets to put all of her little figurines and toys and things and take them for a ride on her bike. Now, of course, this is not meant to last forever, and I'm sure after a couple times of her falling over, this will probably pop off. But I just wanted to give her something that she could use now, and it worked out perfectly because I just used zip ties to attach it to the bike, and she loves it. But what do you think? For this first DIY, I thought it would be kind of fun to create a towel holder to hang outside for my daughter to hang all of her little beach towels by our little pool. So to do this, I grabbed a leftover sign from Easter and I took off the ribbon, flipped it over, sanded it just a little bit, and then I painted the entire thing with some Waverly white chalk paint. After that was dry, I took this ruler that I got from the Dollar Tree and I stuck it right in the middle of my sign, and then by using a black Sharpie, I drew some lines going down so it looked like shiplap. Now I'm not sure where my head was at, but you're gonna see these lines are not straight at all. But that's okay, I guess it just adds to the little fun of summer. Then I went ahead and sanded it down so it all blended in, and I also ran over it with the white chalk paint that was on my brush and just dry brushed over the lines so they weren't so bold. After that, I took some orange paint and I dry brushed over the whiteboard with a chippy brush just to give it a little pop of color. Now, you're going to see in all of these DIYs that I am going to be using bright and fun colors because when I think of summer, that's what I think of. Plus, a lot of these DIYs are going to be revolving around my daughter, so, you know, I wanted it to be really fun for her. So after I went over it with the orange, I went over it one more time with the white. That way, it would all blend in. After that was dry, I took this pack of coasters that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I thought these were so adorable to use to make a sign. So that's exactly what I'm doing. Now, they did come in a set of 4, so by using some super glue and some hot glue, I went ahead and glued them on. The reason I'm using super glue is because this is going to be outside and the sun would melt the hot glue. So you're going to want to use some E6000 or some kind of stronger glue to hold it down. So I just went ahead and glued each one of my little sandals down on my board. After that, I put that aside and I grabbed some painter's tape and I flipped it so the sticky side was up, and then I turned the corners down so that way I had something to hold these command hooks. Now, I thought this idea was genius. I saw it on White Sparrow Living's page and it is so perfect to hold these little things down so that way you don't get paint all over your fingers. But all I did was paint each one of these in a really bright color. So I did bright pink, some lime green, a bright blue, and of course I did yellow. Basically, I just used the colors that I saw on the sandals. Once those were dry, I put one hook on each sandal. Then again, by using my super glue and my hot glue, I'm going to glue each one of them down. After all of my hooks were glued on, I went ahead and took some Mod Podge and I Mod Podged over all of them plus my sign. Now, you're going to want to do this on all of these outdoor projects in this video because the sun will fade the paint and you want to protect all of your DIYs from all of the elements of outdoors. After that, I dry brushed the corners and the edges with that orange paint just to add a little bit more color. Next, I took the back of a paintbrush and now I'm just adding some fun details to each one of these sandals. So in some of them I put polka dots and I would switch up the colors. I just felt like I wanted to add a little bit more dimension and a little pop of fun to each one of these sandals. After that, I found some really cute buttons in my stash, and again, by using the hot glue and the super glue, I glued a button into each one of the flowers. Then I will go back and add polka dots to the pink sandal and the green sandal. I truly love how this towel holder came out. I thought that it was perfect on our back deck. Now, my mom did not want to add any holes to the siding or her house to hang this, so what I ended up doing was I used my crocodile, which is a big hole punch basically, and I punched 2 or 3 really big holes at the top of the sign, and then I use zip ties to zip tie it on to the railing of the deck, which you'll see in the pictures coming up. So this worked out perfectly. I really loved how this turned out, and it is just so fun and adds a really great summer touch to the summer deck. But tell me, what do you think? So right now I have a little hack for you. This isn't really a DIY, but as you can see, I have a bunch of s'mores stuff because we have a little fire pit outside. So I picked up this little container from the Dollar Tree, and this is what I use to keep everything in, so that way it's contained and it's easy just to take outside. So I usually put some plates and napkins in this big space back there, along with the so I knock everything over, along with the little poker things, the skewers. And then I put my graham crackers right in this front one, and then I also stick my chocolates in here, and then I put my little marshmallows on top. And it's really easy for me to take outside over to our fire pit. So super, super easy. Obviously my fire pit's not open right now, but when we do light it, then it's all right there. So this is just a little simple hack, not really a DIY, but it was fun to put together and made it so much easier to carry everything out. Now it's time for s'more DIYs. So something that I always have out at family gatherings or outdoor parties is a bucket where I provide some sunscreen and some bug spray. So I thought I would dress one up. So this is a super simple DIY or hack that you can do. So all I did was I took a little canvas board that I got from the Dollar Tree, and by using these stickers, I'm spelling out, now at first I put bugs and bites, but I realized it was supposed to be burns and bites. So I'm just spelling that out, and then once I have them all positioned how I like, I'm going to paint over this with my Pink Parfait Apple Barrel paint. So after all my paint was dry, I just peeled up all of the letters. And now there was some bleeding, so I did have to go in with my white paint pen and paint on inside of it and just kind of clean up the letters a little bit. Then to add a little bit more detail, I used my white paint marker to make stitching lines around the perimeter of my sign. Then for one last final touch, I took these puffy letters, and typically I paint over them, but because I want this sign to be colorful, I just left them as is, and by using hot glue and super glue, I glued one of these little dots in each corner. After that, I took this bucket that I bought at the Dollar Tree, and again, by using my hot glue and super glue, I glued it to the front. And it was as simple as that. It is perfect for displaying all of the sunscreen and bug spray for all of my guests, or just for us, for my family out in the back deck or outside, and it's easy to access as well. I love how this came out, but what do you think? Okay, here's another little outdoor hack, and sorry someone's mowing the lawn, I apologize, but Our two little doggies loved to play with toys outside, but my mom really hated that all the toys were just everywhere after, obviously, they don't put them away when they're done. And honestly, the black dog right there, my mom's dog, likes to play with water bottles, empty water bottles. So it looked like trash all over the yard because after we were done drinking a bottle of water, we would just throw it to him, and he loves to play with it. So my mom, all the credit goes to her, she got an old pot and then she hid it right in the mulch, and there's all the toys and of course his empty water bottles. And they're hidden behind all of these plants and no one would ever know. So that way it helps keep all the toys contained and it doesn't look like trash and junk all over the yard. So there's just a fun little dog hack for you. So hopefully this can come in handy in your front yard too. Okay, so by the pool, of course, there are a ton of pool toys. So I decided to make a basket where we could contain all the toys. So I grabbed this sign that is currently in Dollar Trees and I flipped it over, took out the hanger, and then I sanded it down just a little bit to make it a little smoother to paint. So I got this bright idea to dry brush a bunch of bright colors over this board. And while it was great in theory, what ended up happening, of course, if you mix a bunch of colors, it comes out looking like brown. So I really did not like how that looked. So to fix this, well, I thought it would be better to add more bright colors on top of that, but I'm really not loving it. So to fix this, I just decided to continue doing all the colors, but then I dry brushed over white to tone it down and to make it look less like brown and more bright and colorful. Once that paint was dry, I took these letters that I also got from the Dollar Tree and simply spelled out pool toys. Now, because the O's were yellow, I have a thing where I cannot put two of the same color sticker next to each other. So what I did was I used some Q's and cut off the little line at the bottom to make it look like an O. That way I could switch it up just a little bit. So after that, I just made sure that they were all pressed down and positioned how I liked. And then I took my black paint marker and I made some stitching lines around the perimeter. That way it added a little bit more detail. Then to protect this entire sign, I gave it a coat of Mod Podge. Then to give it that final touch, I took those puffy stickers again and I super glue, hot glued one to each end of my sign. Now the basket that I used was actually a laundry basket that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I just used string to put through those holes and then tie it to the basket. And it was so easy, and I love how they keep all of my daughter's toys contained and looks a little cleaner outside. But what do you think? For my last DIY, I'm going to make a sign to hang out on the deck. So I'm going to use this unfinished wood cabinet door that I actually picked up at a local store, and they were selling these for 2 for 99 cents. And if you are a crafter, you know how amazing that is. So the first thing I did was take some regular black acrylic paint and I painted the inside of this cupboard. After it was dry, I took some letters from the Dollar Tree and I'm going to spell out "Welcome to R." After they were positioned how I liked, I took my pink parfait apple barrel paint and I painted over the entire middle section of my cupboard, and I gave it 2 coats. After my pink paint was dry, I used my little knife to peel up all of the letters. Now again, there was a little bit of bleeding, so I just took my black paint pen and I went in all of the letters and just cleaned them up. This is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you're seeing today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it really help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you love seeing my content and that you want to see more. So YouTube will put more of my videos in your homepage. So don't forget to hit that like button. Next, I took these 3-inch stencil letters that I got from Amazon, and I will have the link in the description box below. I love these. I use these a lot. They are just so easy to use, and I feel like they are really good quality, but I just spelled out deck. I made sure to line them all up, and then I used painter's tape to tape them down, that way they didn't move. Then I went in with some black acrylic paint and my makeup sponge, and I just stenciled the letters on. After my letters were dry, I peeled off the painter's tape and took off the stencils. And as you can see, these actually work pretty well. But again, I just went in with my black paint marker and just traced around the letters just to clean them up a little bit. But for the most part, I really love how these turned out. After that, I took more painter's tape and I taped around the edges of the middle section of my cabinet. So there is kind of like an indent there because I'm going to paint that a different color, and I don't want that color to get on my pink paint. After it was all taped off, I took some of my lime green apple barrel paint and I painted around the inside of my cabinet. Once that was dry, I took more tape and I covered the green paint on my cabinet because now I'm going to paint the outside of my sign, and of course I don't want that paint to get on the green paint. So I taped it up so it would protect it. Next, I took some white chalk paint from Waverly and I painted around the perimeter and the sides of my sign. Then once my white paint was dry, I went in with my yellow paint from Apple Barrel and painted around that with 2 coats. After that was dry, I peeled off all of my tape, revealing all of these bright and fun colors. Now, I did go in and make some touch-ups with a smaller paintbrush, but I thought that these colors really looked great together and it was really fun to make. Next, I set that aside and I took these little wooden sandals that I got from the Dollar Tree, and by using my knife, I am just kind of scoring it in the middle. That way I can bend it and it'll snap because I want these to be 2 separate sandals. Once I got them apart, I did sand down the edges. That way they weren't so rough, but also to kind of give them that rounded shape. Next, I gave each one of my flip-flops a good coat of Waverly chalk paint in white. After my white paint was dry, I went in with this really pretty turquoise or teal blue paint. And because my brush had a little bit of the white chalk paint on it, it actually blended the two colors together, and I really love the blue that it ended up making. After those were dry, I took some purple and white twine that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I cut off a long piece and then folded it in half. Then I tied a knot in the middle of the string. Actually, I double knotted it, and then I tied a knot on either end. Next, I cut the string where it was looped, and then again by using my super glue and hot glue, I glued my string down and I put the middle knot up at the top, and then I put one knot on either side to make it look like the straps of a sandal. Now I did not pull the twine tight so it laid flat. I kind of glued them upward a little bit so they bumped up, if that makes any sense. And then I just repeated this step on my other sandal. Finally, I took the sandals and I glued one to the top left corner and one to the bottom right corner. And I apologize, I'm out of frame for this, but this cabinet was huge. I could not fit this whole thing in my frame. But I love how vibrant and colorful this sign came out. My mom loves it too. My dad did end up drilling or nailing in a sawtooth hanger on the back because there was already a nail in my mom's house, and then we just hung it on the back deck and it was perfect. But what do you think? So all of my DIYs are going to be inspired by this planter that my mom picked out for her front porch. So everything I made is going to follow that turquoise teal color. So everything I did kind of followed that style. So for the first DIY, I'm going to make a welcome sign. So I have this cabinet door. Actually, I got 2 for 99 cents at a local grocery store. I could not believe it. But the first thing I did was give this 2 really good coats of Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster. Next, I took some sandpaper and I sanded the entire thing down. Now, if this is not your style and you just want it purely painted and nice and clean, you can absolutely skip this step. But you know me, I love that rustic look. So I sanded it down as much as I could. Then after that, I cleaned it off. Now, I just want to let you know, I am wearing clothes here. I was just at the pool with my daughter, and then when she fell asleep for a nap, I just ran upstairs and started working on this. So I do have a bathing suit cover on and a bathing suit underneath that. So I do want to let you know I actually do have clothes on. So after I got it all sanded down, I took these stencils that I absolutely love. I got them on Amazon. They will be in the description box below. And I spelled out the word welcome minus the O. For the O, I'm going to be using that little pot that you saw there, and we're going to add some flowers. And then, of course, this set only came with one E, so I put the H at the bottom as a space holder. After I had them all lined up, I took some painter's tape and taped it all down so they wouldn't move on me when I went to paint. After that, I took a little part of a sponge brush and Waverly chalk paint in the color Peacock, and I went ahead and stenciled all of these letters on. Now, I chose this color because, again, I am trying to pull out that teal turquoise color that was in those planters that my mom had picked out. After the top letters were painted on, I went ahead and peeled back the tape and took off the stencils. Then when it came to the bottom, I left the M on, but I took the H off and then replaced that with the E. But I left the M on so I could line up the E underneath it. And then I went ahead and I stenciled that letter on. After that was done, I went ahead and peeled off the rest of the tape and the stencils, and then I just made a few touch-ups where it might have bled through. Next, I took the pot that I was going to use as my O, and by just dry brushing some of that peacock color over it, I thought that I would do this so that way it would bring the whole thing together and also make it cohesive with the letters. So after I did the peacock color, I went over it with some brown antique Waverly wax, and then I went over it with that plaster color on top just to kind of dull it all down. Now, to attach this pot to my sign, I really was trying to think of a different way to do it other than drilling a hole and tying it through or putting a nail in. So what I did was I tied some basic twine around the top underneath that lip, and then I'm also hot gluing it down, that way it doesn't move. Then I'm going to tie a little loop with the ends of the twine. Next, I took a command hook, and by using the super glue and the hot glue, I'm going to glue that down under the C, but I'm going to connect the pot to it so I had my spacing correct. So that way it hung where I wanted it to hang. Now, I made sure to use super glue because this is going to be outside and the sun will melt the hot glue. So you definitely want to use E6000 or something other than just hot glue. Then I threw a little super glue and hot glue underneath the pot itself. That way it didn't really move. Next, I added a little twine bow to the front of my pot, and again, I used the super glue and hot glue. Next, I cut off the rest of the twine that was on top. I'm not really worried about the command hook because after I put these florals in, you're not going to see it at all. So after that, to finish it off, I just threw some floral foam in my pot and just started adding any kind of flowers that I wanted. Now, I did end up switching out the flowers. My mom actually made an arrangement that she liked, and then she put it in, and then I added a little American flag, which you'll see in the photos coming up. And then just to protect all of it, I gave this entire thing a really good coat of Mod Podge. I really love how this came out. It really took me out of my box to use that paint color, but like I said earlier, I really wanted to bring out that teal or turquoise color from my mom's planters, and she loved it and I loved it, and it's a great pop of color on her front porch. What do you think? For the second DIY, I'm going to make a front door hanger for my mom's door. So I'm going to start off by taking this hula hoop that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut the little paper, it's not really paper, I don't know what it is. Anyway, the covering off of it, and I'm going to peel it back. Now, it did take me a minute to try to figure out how to get this off, but once I made a slit, you're going to see it came off super easily. And then because the two, it kind of detached from itself, I went ahead and poured out all of the little things inside, and then I hot glued the two ends back together. After that was all ripped off, I gave this entire hoop inside and out 2 really good coats of black paint. Now you can absolutely take this outside and spray paint it. I didn't have any black spray paint. I really just wanted to use what I have. It really didn't take me that long to paint this. It was just kind of hard holding it after a while because my hands would get all full of paint, but I got it done. After it dried, I took some florals that I got from the Dollar Tree, and again I have the little pops of blue in there, and then I found the perfect turquoise teal flowers there as well that I'm going to be using, and I cut all of my pieces apart. It just makes it so much easier for me to arrange this arrangement. Now, if you've been following me, you know I'm not great at the floral arrangements, but this one I thought I could handle, and I actually thought it came out pretty well. Now, for these white bunches of flowers, I actually did not cut those apart. I just used them as bunches. but I did cut the stem down, that way it wasn't so long. Now to attach all of my pieces, I'm actually going to be using some green twine that I had in my stash, and then just tie all of these pieces on. I did this for a couple reasons. One, I didn't feel like fighting hot glue and super glue to stay on the hoop because there's not a lot of surface area, and two, this would be easy to take apart if I want to reuse the florals or do something different or use the hoop for something else, and this worked out just fine. So what I did first was I laid out the white bunches stem to stem or end to end, and then I just went ahead and I tied it. Now once I had the first one tied, I cut the ends of the twine off, and then I just used that same twine to tie this other one on. Now I am tying it very, very tight, and I'm like double, triple knotting it so that way they don't move or fall off. Then I just cut off any excess twine. Next, I take the blue roses, I guess they would be. I'm not sure what these are. Carnations? I don't know. You guys know I'm not good at the whole flower thing. And this is where I say I'm going to cut them into individual stems, and then I'm simply just going to push the stems into the twine that's already there, and this actually worked out pretty well. Now, when I arrange these, I do what I call the mirror method, and basically that means that whatever I do to the top, I do to the bottom. So I just stuck one in the top, and then I stuck one in the bottom bunch of white flowers, and then I stuck one in the top and one in the bottom, so that way they're all even, and that way it looks the same on the top and the bottom. I hope that makes sense. Now, as you can see, some of the stems are poking through, so I just simply went through and cut off the extra stems. Next, I took these little blue berry flower plants and I stuck those in there as well, and I thought that that made this really all come together, and I really loved the contrast of blues in this little arrangement. After that, I took this blue ribbon that I got around Easter time from the Dollar Tree, and I cut a piece long enough to fit across the entire hoop. Now, I'm going to try to make this look like a banner, and at first I tucked it in the back, but then I realized that I actually wanted it to go on the top. So all I did was I put the ribbon on the top of the hoop. Now, with the side of the flowers, I tucked it all in there, and so that way the ribbon was kind of hidden underneath the flowers. Then on the opposite side, I am just going to glue that down using the super glue and the hot glue. And what I did was I glued the ribbon down first, and then you're going to see that I fold it over on itself to make that banner look, and I'm going to glue that down as well. I hope that made sense. After I had that glued down, I went ahead and cut a dovetail into the end of that ribbon. And like I said, that's where I folded it over on itself, and then I used the hot glue and the super glue to give it that banner effect. Now for the other side, I am pulling it so tight, that way it's a nice tight piece of ribbon, and basically I'm just doing the same thing. I'm adding the super glue and the hot glue to where the bunch of flowers are, and then I'm going to pull, I'm going to push it down. I was like at the bottom of that super glue at that point, but I was determined to get every drop I could off of it. And that's just that fix-all glue from the Dollar Tree. I've really loved using that. And then I just did the same thing. I glued it on top of itself to make that banner look, and then I dovetailed the ends. Next, I'm going to take this home sign that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I am going to glue that in the middle of the banner, but first I wanted to arrange my flowers so that way, like I said, that ribbon was hidden and all you see is the end of it. I really love that look. I thought it was pretty cool. So to make this home sign pop, I did brush over it with some black acrylic paint. It's just a dry brush, and because I really wanted to keep the galvanized look on there, but I did feel that it needed to pop from the ribbon. And then after that, I just simply used my hot glue and my super glue to glue this on the ribbon. Then after all my glue was on, I wasn't even thinking. I put glue on the whole thing, but realized that only the middle of it was actually going to be touching, so I had to hurry up and move something underneath so the glue didn't get on the carpet. And then I just went ahead and pushed it down. I apologize if I sound kind of weird. I am still trying to get over this cold. If I sound stuffy or kind of froggy, I apologize, but I am at the tail end of it. I am feeling much better. So after that, I just flipped it over. I touched it up or reinforced it with some more glue, and that completed this really cute door hanger. I really love how it's not your traditional wreath. I am not good at, like I said, the floral arrangement or making wreaths, but I think that this I could handle, and I think it has enough florals and flowers, and it's so modern looking as well, and I love it, and my mom loves it too. But what do you think? For the third DIY, we're going to be making a little plant stand table. So I started off with this pizza pan, and I gave it 2 really good coats of the Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. After it was dry, I took this placemat that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I thought it was perfect because not only did the color match perfectly, but I really loved what it said. So I realized that this splatter screen actually is the perfect size to trace around these placemats or whatever you're going to put in the middle of a pizza pan. So I went ahead and I just traced it around, and then I'm going to cut it out. Then by using that super glue and hot glue, I'm simply going to glue this placemat in my pizza pan. Now, because that planter had a mix of browns and that teal turquoise color, I grabbed my truffle paint in its Waverly chalk paint, and I dry brushed that around this tray. I went around the perimeter on the plaster paint, but then I also went in the middle as well, because like I said, I'm trying to tie it all together. And I thought that this really not only made it distressed, but it actually went really well with those planters. Now, to cover the edges of the placemat, I took this piece of mop, actually, and I hot glued that around the inside of the pizza pan and the edge of the placemat to cover it. Then I did decide to flip the pan over and give that 2 really good coats of the plaster chalk paint. While that was drying, I took 2 plungers from the Dollar Tree, and I took the plunger part off. You guys know how much I love using these plunger sticks. But after I got the plunger part off, I took this little saw that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I simply just cut off the curved ends. I did leave the little corkscrew end on there because it's flat at the top, but I wanted to cut off the curved end. Now what I did was I cut off one first and then used that to measure all the other ones, and then that was going to be the length of all 3. Now this little saw worked at first really well, and I really loved using it, but then you're going to see what happens in just a minute. And boom. My saw completely broke right mid-saw. So then I just grabbed my saw from my miter box and I finished cutting off the end of this plunger stick. Once I had all of my sticks cut down and they were all the same length, I went ahead and sanded down the edges so they were nice and smooth. Then by using my hair dryer and my little scraper tool, I scraped up all of the stickers on the plungers. Then I gave each one 2 really good coats of the Plaster Waverly chalk paint. While those were drying, I took this pot that I got from the Dollar Tree, and by using my crocodile, and again, any of these supplies are going to be linked in the description box below, I punched 2 holes next to each other on one side of the pot. Then I took a large zip tie, I put it through one hole and then back through so that the ends were on the inside of the pot, and then I kind of tightened it a little bit, and then I slipped in one of my plunger sticks and then I tightened it. Now I did try to make the plunger stick a little angled, so it like at a slant so it stuck out, and it seemed to work a little bit, but then I did that to the opposite side as well. Now you're going to see that I accidentally punched too many holes. I don't know why I did that, but nonetheless, there it is. And then I just did the same thing, so now I have 3 plunger sticks attached to my pot. Then I went ahead and reinforced each one of the sticks with some super glue and some hot glue. But I love that crocodile tool because it goes through metal, wood, plastic just like this, and it really comes in handy. I'm loving it. So after all of my zip ties were all through and glued down, I went ahead and cut off the end of the zip ties so that way they weren't sticking out. Next, it was time to put our pizza pan on the top to make the top of our table. So all I did here was I just put some hot glue and super glue on each one of the plunger sticks, and then I just simply put the pizza pan on top. Now, as I was doing this, like I said, I did kind of try to slant them a little bit to give them extra stability. It kind of worked, kind of not worked, I don't know, but you can see that I'm slanting it a little bit, and then I'm just pushing really hard. Now I am holding it down until the hot glue set up, that way it gave it some kind of immediate hold, and then you're going to see that I actually flip it over, that way the weight is on the top. Now I've had this for about 2 weeks now, and it's actually done pretty well. It's held up pretty good. So once it was flipped over, I did go back and reinforce wherever the stick touched the pizza pan and the pot with some super glue and some hot glue. Now, even though the legs didn't end up being even on all the sides, I still really love how this came out. It fits perfectly in the corner of my mom's front porch, and I can display some plants and some flowers, and it is so cute. What do you think? Now for my next DIY, I honestly was just playing here. I picked up this little turquoise or teal planter from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just trying to recreate the look that was on that original planter. And if you caught it, this was in the pictures just before, and I did not get pictures of this individually, but I just thought that I would take you through my process, which is really just throwing paint on. And I was trying to do this by memory because I didn't have a picture next to me of the planter, so actually I kept running downstairs and checking the planter and comparing the two and holding it next to each other. And so it's actually kind of funny because I don't know, that's just how I found it easier. So you're going to see that I go in with some dark blue and then that peacock color, and then I run downstairs, I go check, and then I kind of fix it up again or change some stuff. So this is just kind of how I got to the final look. I was just really playing with colors. You know, I did not paint a lot. If you followed me for a while, you've heard me say a couple times that I used to be really afraid of painting. If anything required paint, I would avoid it. And now I absolutely love painting. I love, getting my hands dirty and mixing the colors and finding the textures and adding dimension. So this was just really fun for me. And like I said, this was just kind of something I just wanted to play with, but I just wanted to take you through. I'm not going to say that it turned out perfect or exactly how the planter looked, but hey, it was a learning process for me, and it gave me more practice with kind of doing this textured and double or two-toned look, or actually I guess it ended up being four-toned really after all the paints went on. Also, this is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you see so far, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does that help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you're loving my content and would like to see more, so then they'll start putting more of my videos in your homepage so you can catch even more DIYs. So if you would be so kind, hit that like button. I would ever be so grateful. Okay, so I want to know, you've heard me several times in this video refer to the color of the pot or the paint as teal or turquoise. You tell me, is it teal or is it turquoise? I don't know. I kept going back and forth, but let me know in the comments which one you would call it. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you a little bit of that painting process, and like I said, I don't really have any individual pictures of it, but at the end you're going to see some final photos, so you can check it out then. For my last DIY, we're going to be making some pillows. When I saw these dish towels at the Dollar Tree, I thought they were perfect. Not only did the colors match, but also I love what it says, because my mom's front porch is filled with flowers, which you'll see, so this could not have fit in any better. So the first thing I did was open up the entire dish towel and cut it in half. Then I took this placemat that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm using my knife, or you could use a seam ripper, to tear apart the front and the back. I'm only going to be using the back, this turquoise or teal part, as the back of the pillow. So once I found an opening and started ripping the hem or the seam, I just ripped the two apart. After that, I took one of the halves of the towel, and I am measuring it to the back of the placemat, and I decided that the towel was actually a little too big, so I'm just going around the inside of that black square and cutting out just the beige part of the towel. And then I'm going to cut the placemat in half so that way it will fit this towel. So now I am smoothing out the placemat. Some of the edges were folded under, so I am just trying to do my best to unfold all of it. And then I'm going to lay my dish towel upside down, so the printed side down, and then I'm going to start hot gluing it. Now you can absolutely sew these pillows. I do not sew, so I opted for hot glue. It's working out just fine, but I just added some hot glue to each of the edges, and then I'm hot gluing the towel onto the placemat. Now when I got to the fourth side, I only hot glued half of the side because you're going to need to leave an opening so you can stuff it. Once that was done, you're going to flip your pillow right side out, and then I just used some stuffing from an old pillow and I started stuffing it so that way it was nice and full. Now here's a little tip or trick for you. I actually use a dowel rod or a skewer to push out the corners. So I just stick it into the middle of my pillow and then I just push out the corners, and then I also use that to help stuff the corners with the stuffing as well. So before I started stuffing it, I did just go through and reinforce some of the sides that may have not got glued down properly, and then after that, that's when I took my dowel rod and pushed out the corners, and then I'm going to stuff it. Once my pillow was stuffed and as full as I liked, I went ahead and I folded in the corners, and then I hot glued down the rest of my fabric. Now here's another little tip for you. It is so much easier if you fold down the fabric on itself, glue that together, and then glue the two together. I will walk you through it because I know that was confusing. So as you see, I folded the turquoise fabric over. I'm gluing it down to itself. So I added some glue. There we go. It's glued down to itself. And then I'm going to glue the two together. It just makes it so much easier and keeps all your fabric even and helps when it goes to glue it. That way the stuffing doesn't get in it. And as you saw, I also used my dowel rod to push that stuffing in there. Now as far as the corners, I'm just going ahead and pushing them in, and then I'm going to add some hot glue to secure it. Now I ended up making 2 of these types of pillows, and coming up I'm going to show you how to make one more type, and I think that one is so much easier to make, but I really did love making this one too. And like I said, all these accessories and all this decor today added so many pops of color to my mom's front porch, so I loved it. So I ended up picking up 2 of those dish towels. So I grabbed the other one. Now rather than using a placemat to be the backing, I'm going to fold it over on itself, but inside out, so all of the print is on the inside. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use my hot glue to glue down the sides, but I'm going to leave a half of a side open, so again, we can go ahead and stuff it. Once all of my sides were glued down, I'm going to, again, take this one and turn it right side out, and then I'm going to use my dowel rod to poke out the corners, and then I'm going to stuff it. So basically, I'm doing the same thing that I did to the first pillow. After it was all stuffed, I'm going to take the edges, I'm going to fold them down on itself just like we did with the other one, glue that down, and then I'm going to glue the 2 ends together. Now I decided to give this one just a little bit more detail. So what I did was I took this blue twine from my stash and I'm just wrapping it around 3 of my fingers several times. Sorry, correction, 4 of my fingers several times. Then after I have it the thickness that I like, I cut the end off, and then I'm going to take another little piece and I'm going to tie at the top to look like the beginnings of a tassel, and that's exactly what we're making. We're going to make a tassel. So after that was cut off, or I'm sorry, tied on, I cut off the excess twine, but I am leaving some twine on there to adhere to the pillow. Then I'm going to cut the loops at the bottom and then cut it all so they are even. Now I did make 4 of those, 1 for each corner. So after they were all made, I went ahead and I created like a little opening with my finger in each corner, and then I just simply hot glued the tassels to each corner. And that was it. That finished this super easy little pillow. Now I used this one on the little swing that we have, and then the 2 other ones I put on little chairs, and again, they just added so much detail and made it so fun and summery looking out in the front porch, and they're so comfortable but yet small, so they don't take up a lot of room. What do you think? Whew, I know that was a long one, but if you stuck with me for the whole video, you are a true MVP, my friend. Thank you so much. Well, I hope that you got a lot of inspiration and ideas on DIYs that you can create this summer. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you loved this video, don't forget to check out this one right here and click my face so you can become a subscriber. All right, well, until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye.